We're ready to go. We're at 5, the consent agenda.
I'd like to pull.
Okay, I'm
Oh,
No.
Oh,
Chris?
5.22, the energy
It's
regulator.
fine.
yeah, I thought so.
That's fine. Okay, so pulling 5.22. We have the consent agenda moved with that item pulled, please.
Yep.
Moved by Director Jones, second by Director Mayor. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. We'll put 5.22 somewhere else in the agenda. Someone just let me know when you need to deal with it. Sorry?
We'll put it under CFA.
Okay, great.
As 11.9.
Thank you. All right, any business arising from the minutes? Being none. 7.1.1. Canada Community Building Fund, previously called the gas tax.
I'll just let Suzanne know.
Okay. Let's see what happens. All right, Director LaFrance and Mr. Hodgins, welcome. We are on 7.1.1 Canada Community Building Fund. I'll turn it over to you.
You're welcome to be. Whatever you want to do. All right, but
Director LaFrance, are you ready? Are you?
Yeah, I'll pass it over to Colin Hodgins to have a little presentation to the board on this report.
Yeah, so this report is just requesting funding from the Community Works Funds for a few different projects. We have 2 water system upgrades for Divine Water and Edmonton North Water. And then we have 2 landfill assessment, long-term assessment planning projects for Lillooet Refuse and Darcy Divine. And then the last item is external funding to Minta Communications for some communication equipment. And I'll open it up to any questions.
Questions?
I just have a question. I'm happy to see the $10,000 from Area B for the refuse ground service, etc. Can we add, and if this has more costs, that's okay with me. Also looking into the feasibility of irrigating those adjacent fields as has been put forward over the last couple of years as part of that?
I'm sure we could look into that as a maybe
As
another project.
Yeah, we don't have any data on that. I don't know
No, I
what
don't
those
think-
adjacent fields are. Are they a part of our property? Okay, so then that shouldn't be a problem.
And I can certainly send on the background information. I don't think it's necessarily gone to you. It's gone forward to the CAO a couple of times, but yeah.
Yes, I do believe that Mr. Dalton had this conversation and Mr. But has been part of the conversation as well. It was a request to bring forward a consideration for irrigation of the lands around the landfill by an adjacent property owner who has livestock. I know in discussions with staff that there are potentially some concerns about some of the buffer areas that have been established and a little bit more work that staff just needs to dig into to find out whether or not irrigating those lands is a possibility. Right now, we don't have any funds allocated towards staff time for that investigation. And we did suggest that it could come from Area B funds to help offset that. We did recommend that perhaps there is going to come through budget as well, and whether or not it can be considered for these funds to allocate that, I think could be a consideration. I just know that, yeah, we could find it good through budget.
Yeah, and there's no urgency, obviously, for this year.
Well, they're kind of
2024, you'd probably like to.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, like, you don't need it today.
No, but
You wait till the November budget.
it could. I just thought that this was a good opportunity to actually get that in the plan and have some funds attached to it. Yeah, because it keeps being put off. Mainly, I'm interested because it is such a brilliant idea in terms of reducing the fire hazard up
Yeah.
there. That's my goal. And it's just a good idea. And we've got a good candidate here, so I just like to have it added to this particular that.
Okay. You comfortable with that? Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
thank you. Thank you, everyone else. Does anyone else have any questions? Go ahead.
I'm curious how we got to this list. Why were these projects chosen specifically for the use of these funds?
Fuel, didn't it?
For me,
This came out of that fuel project.
is that through fuel and the EA?
I think so.
EAs?
Didn't it?
Just
Suzanne?
what fits for this funding?
These were discussions with staff, so we are trying to allocate as much of the community works funds still remaining of the current agreement as much as possible. Because the next agreement is coming out in 2024 and potentially they will have different regulations. So to avoid having to have two separate reserves of community gas tax, community works funds, we attempted to try to fill them up with projects, and this is staff developed projects.
Okay, maybe just follow up, and that's great, and I know staff put a lot of thought into it. I just wonder if in the future there would be some possibility for input from the board on choosing some projects when we're using funds like that.
Yeah, so right now we're following the policy for this fund. There is a policy that the board adopted, and it goes to the EAD committee first to approve of the projects, and then it's recommended to the board for their final approval because they actually have the authority over the funds. The community works funds is a board vote.
Mhm. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Russell?
No, like those community works funds, those are for gas tax funds at one time. And the amount of money that's allotted to Area C projects, those were gas tax funds that were allotted to Area C to do whatever you were allowed to do with them. So I would like to move the first 3 VATs and the 5th VAT, if I can do them all at once.
I'll second that, and then I can add the 4th if you like.
Okay. Sounds good.
I'll second that.
Okay,
motion.
so the first clump of motions together moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Birch Jones. Further comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And the loan.
And I would like to move the 4th that with the additional consideration and the costs associated with investigating irrigating the adjacent fields to the landfill in an agreement with the neighbor. And I will forward you the background on that. And with that addition, I'll move the 4th that.
Thank you. And seconded by Director Demare. Comments? Call the question, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a comment.
Sure.
I want to thank staff
Yes.
and especially Russell Mack for helping fund Minto Communications.
Yeah.
They're totally depleted in funds, and the fire took out a good portion of the, well, it took out the power line that went up to the tower, which is quite long. And yeah, just trying to get some temporary internet in certain areas of the valley. They've worked their butts off once they were able to get in the board and the one staff member that they have. Thank you very much, Russell.
You're very welcome.
Right. Go team. Thank you. And thank you. Yeah. We're moving on. 8.2. Yeah. She was there and then she left. There we are. Ms. Capernia, welcome.
Hi, good afternoon, directors. So I can give you a quick overview of item 8.2. It's a first reading for a zoning and OCP amendment. So this application is regarding a 4-hectare lot located on Blackwater Road. It's a small road in electoral area C that splits off of Pemberton Portage Road in a direction of Darcy. And so directly across from the subject parcel, there are several large ALR lots of over 40 hectares, and the rest of the land in the vicinity is unsurveyed crown land. The subject parcel is zoned Rural 1 with the resource management subzone, and it is also designated as resource management in the official community plan. Under these regulations, the minimum parcel size is 40 hectares. In addition to that, this parcel falls within the non-settlement areas as defined by the regional growth strategy, and a minimum parcel size of 40 hectares is also recommended for such areas. And so the applicant is seeking to reduce the minimum parcel size from 40 hectares to 2 hectares in order to be able to subdivide their 4-hectare property into 2 lots. And so staff are proposing that the zoning could be changed to Rural 3, which permits parcel sizes of 1.5 hectares, as well as a change of a designation that permits subdivision into up to 2 parcels. And this designation would be rural residential. And so this concludes the summary of the application. And please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you. Questions? See no questions. Would anyone like to move first reading and referral and
I would like to do that.
do you would? Matt, second by Director Mayor.
Let's clarify that I will not be supporting the motion as per our conversation when this came to the board last month. This is against a Metro policy in our regional growth strategy. And I think sets precedent that is not the direction we want to be going.
Good.
Yeah, I missed last meeting, but I did review the report and some of the meeting online. I agree. I don't see the consistency with this with our existing policy on settlement areas, so I will not be supporting this.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay.
Nothing.
Russell, go ahead. Director Mack.
Yeah, just for Director Stoner and Director Pettengill. Have you folks ever been up in this area and saw how remote this property is? As I said before, there's no electricity into this area. You're not going to have, a commercial area ever built in this area. This is about as remote as it gets. So, as far as the regional growth strategy, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever to follow that in this area. And all we're doing is we're impeding somebody from putting another house on their property for some more members of their family. And here we are having a housing crisis, and we're going to stop this or try to stop it from happening. Makes no sense whatsoever. If it was in a different location, then I would agree with it. But I'm actually looking right out my window up that valley right now. And I mean, all there is trees and mountains, and there's nothing there. So to not allow this person to do this in this area makes no sense whatsoever to me. Thank you.
Thank you. I will, unless there's any other comments, I will call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? I note that Director Stoner and Director Pettengill are opposed. Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Katerniak.
Thank you.
Right, 9.1.
Thank you. I'll try not to keep too much time. It's been a while. We've talked about the wildfire sort of anecdotally and sort of snippets one at a one. So as the board meetings have come and through some emails, but I thought I just wanted to take a quick moment just to provide the board an update on sort of things that we have been doing, staff have been doing, because I think we've kind of missed that opportunity. So I'll take any questions when I'm done. I'm happy to do that. So obviously we recognize that wildfires in BC were a complete exception for everywhere, and especially in Area A, we saw a huge impact to the area with 56 properties being impacted, of which 51 had total loss. Just also wanted to note that our EOC was active for 11 weeks. So from July 11th to September 30th. So there was a lot of staff commitment and time in providing that response. And it was approximately 35 members of staff that helped out throughout this whole process. Since everyone was allowed to return home, staff started returning to normal. It's a little bit of everyday activities, and we realized that we needed to form a sort of recovery EOC, which we're calling a recovery committee, to be able to keep this front and center so that we could help try to address and provide those communication pieces to the residents and property owners in the Gun Lake area. And so we established that a couple of weeks ago, and we still have kept our different departments intact. So as far from information perspective, what we've done is we're now putting together a framework, sort of like a checklist, a flow chart, so to help individuals who need that help on what does it mean? What does cleanup mean? What do you need to do as far as cleanup? In the past, we had just provided some contact information, sort of go contact the building department, contact UES on this, and we're trying to really streamline that process. We've heard it was confusing and individuals just needed that help. We had also tried to get someone who's a recovery manager. We were successful with some funding, but I believe this kind of position was oversubscribed in the problem. Everyone was looking for someone with those special skills to be able to help as to what recovery looks like. So we've assigned our director of protective services. He stepped up and said, listen, I'm going to be that point of contact. People can contact me, that's Mark Phillips, and I'm going to help work their way through a lot of this process. We're developing a separate web page. We have it on the Spotlight right now. And we've also created an email list of all the people that we had called, because we did call everyone to let them know that they had suffered a loss, got all their contact information, and we're now starting to email them personally, any information updates that we have. So all of this doesn't just happen overnight. It is taking a process. We're also developing this FAQ form, just things that we've heard. Different staff have taken questions, and we're trying to give that same answer, that funnel through, to be consistent. Asbestos testing, hazardous waste testing, that's another one that we've had to try and navigate through. There was nothing left on properties, and so there is some material left, some metal. And in fact, some of that material needs to be tested before it's removed and placed elsewhere. So it's not like we can just put a bin somewhere and say, several along the road and say, just go and put your debris in this bin, because everything needs to come with some type of certification from the QEP that says this doesn't have asbestos. And it's really to protect our workers. It's to protect the people at the Goldbridge transfer station and at the Lillooet landfill. So, we actually applied for funding through EAF, which is expense authorization form during the EOC, and we were rejected for that. We actually went through 28 applications for EAFs, and we did not get approval on all of them. Debris cleanup, we asked for $220,000 to expand hours and bins at both the Goldbridge transfer station and at the Lillooet landfill, and we were denied that. They said, this is operations, this is ongoing operations, to which we pushed back and said, no, we don't have these hours. We don't have this capacity in order to be able to take this volume, which was 4,000 tons of material estimated to be cleared from this area. How do we handle that? We don't have funds in reserves or in a service area to be able to provide those funds. We've asked the province, we said, is there disaster financial assistance? Well, there is for the local government, if you have any infrastructure that's damaged, but unfortunately, nothing is being provided for this area. We've pushed back, said, what about the testing at Gun Lake? How are individuals in that area supposed to get insurance on testing of a lake, of which is their primary source of drinking water? There have to be some rules and some exceptions on a case-by-case basis. I mean, that alone is what, 36, how much?
42.
Yeah. It's a significant $14,000 a pop, needing 3 rounds of funding. Thankfully, there was funding for the first round, $10,000 came from Area A funds, and there were additional funds from CVRCA.
VRV Preservation
Preservation and Conservation. And thankfully, Director Demare did also say that they were going to fund the next round of funding for water tests. And then he would look to next year for another round, but those are just funds that should be coming from the province. There are 6 sites, you know, do we see what impacts of runoff are going to be happening to the quality of the water? So, you know, geotechnical assessments are currently being done along the Ministry of Forests through BC Wildfire. It's one of the things that they do after the end of a wildfire, looking to coordinate with Dawson and Ministry of Transportation on the roads to make sure there's drainage, sufficient drainage. There are no drainage dishes left on the side of the road anymore. And it's quite steep. Everything's just going into the lake when the water comes. So these are some of the advocacy pieces that we've been working on quite a regular basis to try to get those additional funding sources to be able to provide services to those impacted. What we hear is this is an insurable event. These properties could have been insured. Well, could have, would have, should have. You know, the reality is that individuals need a little bit of assistance, and I think it's unfortunate because staff are working really hard trying to get these pieces. We actually just had a very successful meeting earlier this week with all levels of staffing from provincial agencies. I think there were probably 30 of us, including SLRD staff, on this call. Everyone was motivated to come back and have weekly meetings to see how they can get the information from us, bring back to their counterparts, and see how they can help us. They said, let's not wait, let's do it weekly right now, and then we'll reevaluate. We've touched base the riparian area setbacks and their huge impact, both for cleanup and for rebuilding. For a cleanup right now, there's a gray area as to whether or not a DP is required, which would require a qualified, you know, environmental professional to come in and say, this is what needs to be done, this is how you do it, these are preventative measures, then reviewed by the province. So we've actually contacted them directly. We've had several emails. They attended our call on Monday. We've had a separate follow-up call, and they're looking to see how they can help us navigate this. So is it surface and above that you don't need one, and surface and below, anything tampering in soil? Does that mean heavy equipment can go on there? Is it lighter equipment? It's just this weird gray. So we're continuing to knock on doors and emails. It's not just one staff, it's not just one department, and everyone is trying their best to try and provide that assistance through this whole process. And again, staff is working really hard to continue to make this a priority. And in fact, I think staff are, you know, kind of feeling as though they should be trying to deliver some of the board items that they want to see. They're going, we're not getting to our regular jobs. We really want to prioritize this, and we want to show them that we're not letting them down by moving a lot of these initiatives forward. The reality is, I know we have a quarterly report coming up sort of on those strategic action items. A lot of those initiatives weren't able to be put forward because this is where for 11 weeks, that's a significant amount of time. And at this point, you know, staff are tired. I'm assuming we're going to be seeing a few requests for some leaves, just vacation leaves, not for forever leaves, but for being able to just take that time back a lot. And I think that's appropriate, but that could cause some further delays. So it's not that anyone's not wanting to proceed with these projects. They just don't have the capacity at this time. So I probably went a little longer than I wanted to, but I just wanted to say, you know, we are doing work. We are trying to reach out, have emails. We had a tour. We actually, a handful of us went to Gun Lake area on September 12th. which I think was a great opportunity to see firsthand some of the impacts that are going to be happening. I mean, I know you have snow already. Hopefully that will go away and we can hold off some rains and hold off everything a little bit longer to get people in to get that cleanup done. But I just think it's just a challenging time. So I just wanted to take a moment to let you know that we are working very hard and we're not stopping. We have one meeting that we want to, now that we have this provincial meeting set up, there are some other agencies, such as some of the individuals that we have correspondence with on the agenda and that we've received other emails from, to set up a meeting just to sort of say, this is what we're doing. And also so that we're not duplicating efforts. We want to know, what are you doing? What, you know, let's see, let's just have that dialogue. But we really weren't ready before we got a few of these things in line, and we've been able to contact those provincial agencies just to get that connection, to understand how we're going to move forward and really what the SLRD is able to do for this wildfire, which, as much as I don't like to say it, it's limited as far as funding. Advocacy, yes, we will continue to do that till no one wants to answer our calls anymore. But at some point, unfortunately, I do believe there will be a difficult conversation to say, you know, at this point, we've exhausted all of our avenues. And unfortunately, it is, you know, a property owner responsibility. And unless we get a windfall, which we're still knocking, like, is there an opportunity to get funding to do an overall debris cleanup? Something we're still knocking on the door to try and get done. But if we don't get those funds, unfortunately, there's not a lot more what I've outlined here that we can take forward.
I'm gonna come back to you, Mike.
Thanks for the report, and it sounds like staff's doing everything they can, and thanks to all the staff. Has there been, or is there a need from some or more advocacy from us powerful elected folks to help support staff's advocacy to get more funds for this? Is there a role? I don't know if the chair and Sal have been involved, or if we could lend some support for that.
I can speak to that. I spoke with MLA Jordan Sturdy as well as MP Patrick Weiler. I know that they shared with MLA Jackie Taggart and with MP Viss to share the concerns around the limitations of what the local government can do in this space. The limitations of disaster financial assistance that or will be issued to second homeowners, because these are there are limitations that are out of anyone's control, but there is a ton of empathy and desire to do the work, and you have undersold how much work you and staff have done in that 11 weeks. It was tremendous. The constant vigilance with all of the residents that were really struggling. So thank you for all of that. And so, yes, it continues. And yes, I have met with Bo and Ma, and we've had those discussions, and we'll continue to have those discussions for sure. I'll go to Director DeMare, then Director Stoner, then Director Hoffman.
Just curious, you know, I give you the contact information for the Red Cross. Has staff reached out to the Red Cross yet?
I'm not sure. I can definitely follow up. Some of that information was the TNRD when they had to go through a rebuilding process. They partnered with EMBC at the time. It's EMCR now, the new acronym for Emergency Management and Climate Readiness. Yeah. So we will reach out. I think too, the other thing that we need to look at, we can see what other areas have done in the past as far as rehabilitation and cleanup efforts. But we also need to recognize that it did take a certain amount of time to get those initiatives in place. And I'm just trying to set, hopefully, some realistic expectations from the public that we're working on it, but it's not going to happen overnight. A lot of these things take, the funding commitment. How are you pulling together that procedure? How are you rolling it out? Who's the partners? There is a lot to do. Having said that, you did forward that information, and I'm not certain where staff are at with it, so I will follow up and let you know.
I think to add on to that, the public expectation needs to be measured against the fact that this is the biggest wildfire season in British Columbia's history. And there are communities that have suffered as well. And not to say that one is more important than another, but when the province is looking at how they allocate their time and resources, they are going to do it based on a number of criteria. And so where we fall into that needs to be taken seriously when we hear from residents. And again, it's not that there isn't the desire to help them, but there's a triage system in place, and this is something we need to really kind of measure the expectations.
Yeah, thank you. I really do appreciate the update and all the work that has been going on, both during the active EOC and in hindsight in terms of recovery. From what I continue to hear from colleagues across the province, and now experiencing it from this board table, recovery is one of the pieces that we haven't done a good job of planning for, both at a local level and as a provincial level. And I think that this is going to come to the forefront more and more, especially after this wildfire season, but as well as with the new emergency management regulations that are coming out from the province that identifies recovery. And I'm curious about, from an advocacy perspective, the reality that every single one, especially regional districts, I think more remote rural communities, being able to build up this sort of capacity internally to be able to respond to recovery seems impossible. Like, we have a hard enough time managing our EOCs, and realistically, our EOC staff who are now managing recovery should be preparing for the next wildfire season, and they're already exhausted and they need a break. And so I'm just curious how we start to push from an advocacy perspective to have more of a centralized provincial recovery unit that could be deployed similar to BC Wildfire Service in efforts of recovery, so that we don't have to duplicate this effort over and over again.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I do know that there's a lot of this conversation happening at the UBCM level. This board could write a letter asking for support from UBCM to support their efforts when they go forward to the ministry to ask for this kind of pre-planning for recovery and a coordinated effort. So
do you think a letter now, or do you think that that is something that be included as well, perhaps for a ministry meeting next year to be advocating for as well? Maybe it's both of them.
yeah, I think it's both. I think it's like not a wait. I think we send it now, and then we can build a package of evidence to share with them what it costs a small regional district. And then that helps further the conversation. And especially with, they're going to be tabling their budget. So let's have it in before they have those conversations. And I know that that is all, but one of the things we know is that with the emergency management and disaster relief bill, I think it's called, lots of new requirements on local governments. No new funding package was committed to that legislation. So as local governments, we need to continue to advocate for those funding packages to keep coming. So that is, I think, super useful. If we have a motion, Jenna, to support a letter?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll move with the board write a letter to UBCM on the matter of provincial recovery.
Okay. Second. Other comments? Oh, Lori.
Well, I was gonna say, it was kind of along the same line, like I think that we really need to do something, a little bit greater in the province, because I mean, if I look at Lytton, they're 2+ years, And the recovery, a lot of it has not even started. I mean, it's so minimal, and I think that we really need to look at that. We can't wait 2 years, and Kelowna is in the same boat that Gun Lake is, in that a lot of those fires were up on the hill, so they're in the same position. Have we reached out to them? And maybe a collaborative effort between all of us, you know, might pack a little bit more of a punch, you know, instead of just one of us saying something. Like, can we reach out to the other communities that are affected and say, hey, look, we need something proactive, and we need it now. If we wait another year, then we're back into the forest fire season.
So what if we write the letter and CC it to the other regional districts?
Yes.
Amendment? Friendly amendment?
Good.
Okay. Great. Comment? No? Anyone else? Anyone on the screen? No? Okay,
Okay, I think we need to make a motion to support the efforts of what staff is doing
yeah,
as a board.
we have to deal with the first resolution first.
Okay,
I'll call the question on the first resolution to write the letter and CC it to the RDs. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. New motion?
new motion to support staff. Going that the board supports staff in their pursuit of help funding for all the things that we've talked about here. Water quality testing, debris removal, riparian assessments, the list goes on.
We don't. I appreciate the intention of your motion, but I don't think it's specific enough to give the staff any kind of direction there. Like, we want to support them. Of course, we want to support them. Do you want to put any kind of funding in behind that? Jenna?
That was gonna be my question, and a question through the chair to the CEO of, as we continue to move on recovery, how are we budgeting for staff time and addition, like, there's some point here where this becomes a budget constraint. And I'm just curious when that conversation happens and if the board has input, or is it just that this becomes a top staff priority and everything else gets bumped down the list? I don't mean to sound non-empathetic here, but there is a reality that there is a cost constraint at some point in our existing budget.
And there's other work to do. All these people have other jobs that need to get done.
Okay, let's word it differently then.
Okay,
To support the affected property owners.
there's still a
That
budget
they-
component there, though.
Still a budget component.
There's a big budget component to that.
No, but go to these various government agencies, that the board goes to them. And this is coming from the board, not staff. That we would like support the affected property owners in SLRD area A.
Letters that were sent.
A letter that we'd sent, the board would send to the government ministries that,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so a letter to EMCR, Minister Heyman, Minister Osborne,
Yeah.
Minister Cullen, to ask for provincial support for the affected residents of the SLRD.
Yeah.
Is that fine?
Yeah.
Just
So-
curious if you want to put any specifics on that, Sal, like in terms of like decontamination or danger trees, or if it's just a broad.
I think debris removal, riparian assessments.
Yeah.
Water
Water quality.
quality,
Yeah. Monitoring and,
hazard assessments.
yeah, that's more specific, I like that,
Yeah.
thank you. Okay, moved by Director Demare, seconded by Director Rich Jones. Comments?
And you're also trying to say you want to send your appreciation to the staff for their advocacy work, right? That was the other thing you started to say. Yeah, yeah.
Go ahead.
There's the funding component, and then there's what I'm maybe talk about it. The regulatory restrictions that are being faced by residents to actually help themselves. Is that included in any of these requests that you've already made, or the ones that we're actually going to make here for funding?
We requested support for staff to be able to relax the requirement on a DP in the riparian areas around debris removal from the waterfront. So we have done those requests, but I think staff is ongoing with the requests from other levels of staff.
And what we have here as well, typically a turnaround for the province to review the QEP report for a riparian area DP. It's a 30-day turnaround as a standard response time. It's 30 days. And so they have said what they will do is expedite that and do a 2-week turnaround for those that may need that. At this point, we've received 6 submissions for these hazard materials testing. And we're looking at about 50% of those have come back positive. So it's a small sample size, but it's looking right now at 50-50. We haven't received any, I think one on a vacant lot. But I don't think it's applicable to the wildfire as far as a riparian area DP. Okay. So, but we're just really we're really focusing right now, like our priority is trying to understand if requirement of above ground debris cleanup from wildfire requires a DP. And that's really what they say, yes, that's what it is. We've had a lot of conversation about this. And we're really trying to make it clear for them to not have so much gray, because it's hard to interpret from a staff perspective, and that staff has to enforce that. We have our regulations and requirements guidelines as to when that's triggered. So hazard trees do not need it, but they do need an arborist report. So like there's still some additional expenses that come, an arborist report, a QEP report, they're all still costing people money. But I think that we have, as far as those regulations, we have been working quite hard at reaching out to see how we can get them relaxed or expedited.
I think in the letter, there's got to be urgency, that word in there. Because of
the timing of the snow and the rains and the.
It's all about that's everybody's drinking.
Yeah. Janet?
Related, the province just put out their discussion paper on the emergency management regulations consultation, which is now open until December 31st. So great way to put in some additional feedback.
So let's deal with the resolution on writing the letter to the provincial agencies, and I will call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Do you want to make another motion that we send staff to do feedback, or they'll do that anyway?
I feel like that was part of the first one.
Okay, perfect. Your second part.
Yes, this one should be quick. So what we're looking for here is a resolution to appoint the CAO as the deputy corporate officer in order to ensure redundancy during staff leaves. There is a potential staff leave in the very near future, and it would just, so the possible resolution would be that effective October 30th, Nikki Gilmore is appointed as Deputy Corporate Officer during her term as Interim Chief Administrative Officer at the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District.
Thank you. Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Crompton.
I'll be voting in favor.
Thanks. Anyone else? Can I call the question? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Sorry, I just, on the wildfire piece, if I can, I've seen correspondence, back and forth trying to explain to people the size and capacity of our organization. You mentioned 35 staff. I'm just wondering if you can speak a little bit more to like what % of our capacity has been devoted, or can you put it in that sort of terms, just so people understand the magnitude of our response and therefore the impact of people already had more work than they could handle, and then this came. So can you just sort of make that a little more clear to people?
Well, I'm going to say at least 50%, if not 100% of all department staff have been participating in this wildfire response and recovery. There are a handful of staff that are trying to keep things as usual, which maybe only 5 or 6. All the rest of staff are pulled in at some point. As I mentioned right now, like response was definitely, everybody was there, and then there were fill-ins for people who were trying to take a day off or who were ill, whatever that happened to be. Everyone canceled their vacations and jumped in. Moving forward, communications is a really high focus. UES is as well, just because we're dealing with that debris cleanup. But right now, it's a smaller group of departments that are focusing on this. But it was for a long time, it was almost everyone in the organization who was participating. And those new staff that we had to add capacity to departments were deployed directly into the EOC as opposed to assuming their new posts. So it was a lot of redirection of resources and not a lot of attention on current day-to-day business.
Thank you. Okay, moving along to 9.2. This is an information report on the quarterly development applications report. I believe
We've got Anna available if there's any questions.
are there any questions? If you have them, hold on to them.
I had some, but I emailed the staff and I had them answered, and so I'd like to move receipt of this report.
Seconded by Director Stoner. All question, all in favor, any opposed, motion carries.
Paused up and left within like 10 seconds. That was awesome.
Good.
9.3. Read it, applications. This one where the seat is got trail. You're here just to answer questions.
I am.
Did you have
like a
presentation
lengthy discussion on it?
Sorry,
Unless you prefer lengthy discussion.
not today. I am excited about the work though. It's very exciting. You want to move it?
I'll move it.
You want to second it?
I got one
You
question.
can ask a question. Go ahead.
Just what is the length of that?
It's
For $4 million, what's the length of it?
it's less than 5 kilometers. But 4.5 kilometers.
Oh, yeah.
But it's within the highway right of way. It's more of a road project than a trail project in this case. There's a lot of engineered solutions required. It's a lot of money, a lot more than we've spent on a trail section in the past.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All the question, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And do you want the second that the CAO is authorized to sign applications? Moved by Director Richmond, seconded by Director Crompton. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Further information report regarding the Lillooet Landfill and Recycling Center community engagement. We have.
Brilliant report.
Thank you. Right. I see Ms. LeBlanc. Right, who's starting?
Vanessa will be starting.
Okay. Ms. LaFontaine, are you? Yeah, here you are. Go for it.
Good morning, everybody. All right, my name is Vanessa LaFontaine, Communications and Projects Coordinator for Environmental Services. I'm here today to present the Lillooet Landfill and Recycling Center engagement results. I'm going to provide a quick oral summary of the report's Appendix A, which is a detailed account of the engagement and the results. SLRD staff developed an engagement process, including the Get Involved SLRD platform, a survey, information package, and a community pop-up events. The engagement process was developed to gather feedback from residents within the Lillooet Landfill and Recycling Center service area, which includes electoral area A, B, and the District of Lillooet, to identify priority services as well as current and future solid waste management needs for the Lillooet Landfill and Recycling Center. Residents were invited to participate in the engagement from August 2nd to October 2nd, 2023. And just a note here that this engagement was conducted during very difficult times for some of our residents. We had to do this due to very tight deadlines in order to have a contractor in for September 1st, 2024. Due to the emergency situation, we understand that we weren't able to capture everyone's voice, especially residents of electoral area A. The Get Involved platform included context and a project timeline for the engagement, informing residents of the council procurement process in June and the steps required before the new procurement process could begin scheduled for 2024. The Get Involved SLRD page received 483 visitors Of that total, 359 were aware visitors, meaning that they visited one page. 249 informed visitors, meaning they visited more than one page or one page and one image, and 98 of them were engaged, which means that they submitted feedback via one of the tools on the platform. We received 4 comments on the platform, 2 of which we answered to in the questions section. We received 96 online surveys, 12 physical surveys for a total of 108, and 3 physical comment cards. The respondents were 106 residents and 2 were businesses. I'm going to dive into the resident results. So 82% of the respondents were situated in the district of Lillooet, 11% in electoral area B, 2 in area A. 57% of the respondents use the facility once per week or more than twice per month. Some of the recycling barriers identified by this survey, respondents expressed their concerns about recycling barriers, with the primary obstacle being the necessity to transport all the material to the Lillooet Landfill and Recycling Center, which was highlighted by 36 respondents. The facility's operating hours were the second most significant hurdle, as mentioned by 31 respondents. 81% of the residents who participated in the survey expressed satisfaction with the materials accepted at the Lillooet Landfill and Recycling Center. In terms of experience at the Lillooet Landfill and Recycling Center, 59% of respondents expressed feeling very satisfied or somewhat satisfied with the customer service at the facility. 23% of responses were neutral, while 17 stated being very dissatisfied or somewhat dissatisfied. Regarding the cleanliness of the facility, 66% of respondents stated being very satisfied or somewhat dissatisfied, 21% remained neutral, and 13% felt very dissatisfied or somewhat satisfied. The hours of operation received the lowest satisfaction rating, with 36% of the responses indicated very satisfied or somewhat satisfied. Meanwhile, 16 remained neutral, and 48% of respondents stated being very dissatisfied or somewhat dissatisfied with the facility's operating hours. For additional services, to make it simpler, I grouped priority 1 and 2 together as most important, and priority 3 and 4 together as less important. The reuse shed received 82% of votes as more important. Additional services, 63%. Recycling drywall, 27%. Recycling mattresses, 30%. In terms of less important, the reuse shed received 18% of the votes. Additional hours, 37.5%. Recycling drywall, 72%. And recycling mattresses, 70%. The order of priority based on the engagement results and staff knowledge would be as suggested below. 1, reuse at shed, 2, additional hours, 3, recycling drywall, and 4, mattresses. This is taking into consideration that the ministry has included mattress recycling in their 5-year plan. Reoccurring themes in the comment sections and the community pop-ups were requests for additional or earlier, later hours or swap of days, suggestion to align operating hours with the country store to facilitate recycling drop-offs and deposit beverage containers in the same trip, desire for curbside recycling or a more centrally located recycling drop-off, opinions about the reuse it shed with both supportive and opposing views, a desire to see a reuse program facility established for furniture and household items were most of the supportive feedback. Concerns about paying additional fees, desire for the ability to salvage materials at the landfill, desire to see improvements to the access road to the facility, interest in a composting or organic program, concerns that increasing fees might lead to an increase in illegal dumping, complaints about the poor condition of the access road. Sorry, I mentioned that already. Limited options for commercial disposal, request for a separate time frame for commercial disposal to reduce wait times, concern regarding the cost an inability to opt out of the curbside garbage collection managed by the District of Lillooet, a desire for a use or pay model to ensure that residents doing the right thing can benefit from their efforts. When we were able to have longer discussions or interactions with residents to discuss the estimated cost increases, at first they were concerned, but then they understood that the historical costs had been unrealistically low. In terms of business results, there's 2 businesses who completed the survey. Both businesses were situated in the District of Lillooet. One of the businesses who completed the survey expressed a need for more or different hours of operation, while the other was not impacted by the current operating schedule. One of the businesses reported being somewhat satisfied with the customer service, cleanliness, and hours of operation, while the other was very dissatisfied. Both businesses expressed satisfaction with the materials accepted at the facility. Both businesses ranked the reuse at shed as their #1 priority. And that concludes my summary. And I just wanted to put emphasis that receiving feedback from residents and users is going to be instrumental for staff and will help guide future solid waste management at the Lillooet Landfill and Recycling Center. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much. Question? Go ahead.
Just a comment. I just want to thank you for all your work. I think that this is a really well laid out survey, and you did a really great job, especially during the time of forest fires. And I know it was, quick. So I just really appreciate that. And I will take this back to the community as well, this report. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to move it?
Yep, and also thank the staff, and certainly this report reflects what I know, and I really enjoyed talking with you about the landfill, and I hope we can do that more in future. But this I thought was right on. It was unfortunate that Area A couldn't participate very much because of the fire situation. That is a bit of a gap, but otherwise I think it's a very good report. Thank you, and I'd like to move it.
Move it, receipt. Seconded by Director Hopeful. Comments? No. Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. We are at 7. Community fund allocation. Everyone's favorite question. Here we are. Gonna lose. Armin's not coming back.
You stay out.
We're more than welcome to. 3:45. She's solo parenting, that's not, I'm ready for her.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I can hold on.
Oh, it's fine. We're still good.
Okay, so we're just trying to.
We're even good if Florida leaves though.
Yeah.
Well, fair point, fair point.
No.
No, we are not.
We are not. Be in trouble.
Be the pit of despair.
Yeah.
You want to go on to 9.8? We'll do 9.8.
Sure, I'll move it.
Moved by Director Bridgestone, seconded by Director Crompton.
Yeah.
Question? Comment? No, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. That's all
Thank you.
for that. Yeah, 3. That's the fourth one needs to be moved separately by Director Crompton, seconded by Director Richmond. Call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Good. Should be a couple of facade improvements in the area.
You're good.
9.9.
You're gonna move 9.9, the information report on the Q3 performance report. Moved by Director Crompton, second by Director Birch Jones. Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you to the staff who put that together. I appreciate it. Yeah, the organization.
We're still waiting. for
Let's do
Billy.
10.1. Okay. So something we've talked about as a board for 100 years is the importance of seeing the rest of the region. So I move that we move our November board meetings to Lillooet. I have spoken with most of you. The plan would be to get ourselves all the way up into Lillooet and see your lovely area. We would be moving it to the rec center. That's not it. It's here.
And we would have the Wednesday in Lillooet and the
Wednesday in Lillooet and then
Thursday
the
traveling
tour.
to area A.
Yeah, we'll work out the details. I don't want to put that in the resolution right now because there's too many things that we would have to come back to the board for if we make them too specific. So can we just, you and I'll take that away with Director Demare and we'll come back. So the proposed resolution is that the regular meeting of the SLRD board scheduled for November 22nd be held at the District of Lillooet Rec Center. Can I have someone second my motion? Director Hopful, comments? Yes.
And then the committee of the whole would be there as well,
Yes.
and so we'd be staying overnight.
Yes.
And do we know when we would be done and people would be in cars leaving? Would it be 4?
It would be, we would be back in our home communities at a reasonable hour on Thursday.
We wouldn't go later than 4 on the second day.
No.
I want to express how hard this is going to be on us who have to drive all the way to Lillooet.
Maybe to go. Back.
All right. Are we good? You can vote against if you want.
Yeah.
I don't really care. Okay, I'm calling the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Yay!
And I'm making some arrangements for a local food dinner
Offline.
offline. Okay. Just an option.
Okay, we're going back to 9.7. Hello, Director LaFrance.
Good afternoon again.
Oh, let's do this.
So yeah, so the province gave everybody, all municipalities in BC, this Growing Communities Fund grant. And so far it's a one-time fund, but there has been talk about potentially having it more of an annual basis from the province, but you never know. I don't think it will, but it could happen. So for the provinces, the letter the province gave to us is attached to this report and basically describes what we can use these funds on. And there's a list of applicable funding options. Basically, the fund was meant to help growing communities with needed infrastructure and amenities. But it is very open and it also includes early project work, so assessments that need to be done before the project can be confirmed, and so some of these projects that I have recommended will have some pre-project work, pre-planning work needed. So the staff was, sorry, I'm just opening up this report. Staff was involved in the discussions. A lot of staff were very busy, so it was very last minute, to be honest, because of the fires and people were very busy dealing with the workload for the emergency. But the eligible costs are basically drinking water, affordable housing, childcare facilities, regional capital projects that service First Nations, wastewater, stormwater services, solid waste management infrastructure, public safety, and emergency management equipment not already funded by senior government levels, street lighting, active transportation amenities not already funded by existing provincial programs, improvements that facilitate transit service, natural hazard mitigation, parks additions, upgrades to washrooms, meeting spaces and other amenities, and recreation and related amenities. So it's very wide open. And like I said, it does include early stage development work. What is not applicable, what they call ineligible allocations would be to send the funds to a third party where it's not a service of the SLRD, and or allocating it based on the funding model to the electoral areas. They specifically put that into their FAQs that they don't want this just to be allocated via electoral area. And so what we focused on, what staff focused on was services in need of funding, services with capital projects that will be completed within 5 years. So that was another request. It's a very kind of, I would say they would probably be forgiving if it wasn't completed in 5 years, but they request that the project be completed in 5 years, which would be March 2028. And so looking for projects that potentially could be completed within 5 years, and services with infrastructure projects that are considered critical community services. Regional projects, we tried to find a lot of regional aspects as well, since this is a regional type of fund. And climate change resiliency projects and infrastructure needs due to community growth. So we have a list of 6 allocations that we want to present to the board. We have 325,000 of the 1.525 million going to addressing the corporate asset management plan high-risk asset replacements. So we would have to have condition assessments first to ensure that these do need to be replaced. The corporate asset management plan was just using the installation year as the basis. So it would just be we would have to have some funding for that, and then the replacement for just the high risk assets. So this would involve the staff having to go through and make sure, and make a plan to make sure that just the high risk assets that are critical to community services are looked at. And then we are suggesting 400,000 of the 1.525 million to go to the Bray Lawrence Sewer Service. This Bray Lawrence Sewer Service has been struggling to finish the connections to the new treatment plant. And so this would help facilitate that project to continue advancing. There was some pilot projects done on tie-ins, but this would just finish off that project, not including what was already completed this year for that project. And 100,000 for asset management software. We're looking at asset management software in 2024 to assist the asset management program, which next week we have meetings for the asset management strategy and developing a strategy and governance structure. And so this would help with that kind of cost gap, because we only have $40,000 in the budget right now, 20,000 of which is from Gas Tax Community Works Fund. So that is another option. Gas Tax Community Works Fund can be used for asset management software as well. There's 150,000 allocated to improve the radio coverage of the House Out East area. This is a new project that's just being discovered, and it's from the Emergency Planning Department. Basically, the fire departments have a lot of dark zones, and they want to try to increase the radio coverage for all of the areas where there's significant, I don't know how to call it, dark areas. And so that would need to have an assessment and also some funding for potential towers, and looking at feasibility of where to put these towers as well for radio communications. So there's also 200,000 allocated for Global's transfer station for improvements. This includes looking at the septic trench, which this current year we had an assessment done. Basically, it needs to be upgraded. It's not fulfilling the community's needs at this point. And the last project was to upgrade the Lillooet landfill service, and that would be 350,000. And these all include pre-development work as well. So looking at it's more like a long-term planning process, but they're looking at upgrades to recycling and replacing equipment and ensuring that the Ministry of Environment's requirements are being followed. And potentially for any unknowns with the Lillooet landfill road. I'll just open it up for any questions at this point.
Thank you. Director Mack, go ahead.
Yeah, Suzanne, I was just wondering, is there any money left, or is that all the money there from that grant?
Sorry, that is the full amount being allocated. So the province requested that we allocate the full amount to services before the end of the year. So there is still time to amend and look at other options, but this is so far all of the amounts being allocated.
Yeah, I just noticed that all the electoral areas are covered except for Area C. And, you know, in talking with Edward Wiki, like Darcy, we could definitely do with 2 fire hydrants in that community. That would really upgrade their fire suppression. And with that, we need, you know, to put in some water main. But with Naquadqua doing an upgrade on their water system, and we buy our water from them, now would be the time to be thinking about that. So I would like to see some of that money budgeted for that particular project. And
So
I've been working on it.
Yeah, so we did look at a whole bunch of different projects as well, and I listed some of them in that report. And a lot of them were Area C, but there is still a very big balance of Area C Gas Tax Committee Works funds, which is also applicable to most of those projects, if not all. So the water service definitely can be covered under the Area C Community Works funds remaining. There's still about, let me double check here. I don't have that information right in front of me, but
there is money somewhere else that we can.
there is about, I think there's about 800,000 available still in Area C Gas Tax Community Works funds. Let me double check.
So I guess if that money can be used for that type of project, then I'm fine with that. But I would just like to see that particular project sort of on the radar with Ed. So thanks.
Thank you. Director Richmond, then Director Birch Jones, then Director.
Yeah, kind of similar to Director Mack. I was, you know, Area C is one of the most rapidly growing regions. And it seems surprising to me that there weren't any of the growing community funds attributed to Area C. And I know we have, you know, just as an example, there's a number of recreation goals that we share with Russell and Area C that can be looked at as well. So I just found it a little bit odd, and I was just looking for some rationale as to why Area C, despite its growth, is not seeing any of these funds.
It's because they have plenty of Area C Gas Tax Committee Works funds, whereas the other areas do not have any.
Okay.
So it's really about the need.
Okay, so I'll come back to you guys for your questions. Actually, you go ahead, then you go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I agree with all of this and thank you. I just wondered, I'm thrilled to see the money dedicated to the Lillooet landfill, particularly on the heels of that report. It's just been done, so we kind of know what needs to be done, but I have to add, and I'm glad we've got the irrigating the adjacent fields into that previous resolution, and just to remember that when this work is being done, I'd appreciate that. With that, I'd be happy to move this.
Director Mayor.
No. I'm looking at the $325 number one. And then in the report, condition assessments, and then they list out a number of things that funding could go to. And divine water hydrants and gate valves is in there. I'm just wondering if somehow we could pull that out. And I don't know what the cost is, if it's been costed out or not yet, but pull that out of that so that Area C actually gets some funding out of this.
You're asking to reduce the conditions assessment, 325,000 to allocate some of that to area C
Yeah,
in
and-
light of what the director just said about them having sufficient gas tax funds? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay,
It-
Okay,
It's
we don't
not,
have
it's
a motion on the
conditional
floor.
assessment plus.
right. Director Stoner? Sorry, I want to answer Director Stoner's question first. Unless, okay, Director Stoner, because you're, you go ahead.
Thanks. I'm just curious if staff can elaborate the asset management piece. I don't think the asset management plan has come to the board. And so I'm just curious what's actually contained in that line item and if we're actually putting away enough reserve to be able to address the high risk elements and their renewal and replacement. 325 doesn't actually sound like a lot when we actually might have to replace or renew critical infrastructure.
You did have a report on the camp back in July, or it was July, wasn't it?
I
Yeah,
believe so, yeah.
your first meeting.
June or July, yes.
Okay, so thank you. Can staff remind me what are the critical pieces of high risk infrastructure?
I can't, unfortunately. There's a huge list of, it's actually about 20 to 25 different pieces of infrastructure, and they're not available to me at this time, but I did put in a little brief assessment of what would be looked at in the report, which was in the details. So it looks, it's going to be looking at the Goldbridge Community Complex, Furry Creek Water, Garibaldi Fire, House Sound Fire equipment. There's just equipment that shows as very old. Furry Creek street lighting, the light posts, Pinecrest Sewer, looking at the chambers, Braylorn Water, Reservoir, Goldbridge Water. So there's a huge amount. Divine Water is in here too, looking at the hydrants and gate valves. And but staff have to look at this list with fresh eyes because the asset register was done, over a few years, and it hasn't been, we don't have a really robust asset management process right now. We're still developing that. So the data could be very outdated. So we have to go through that data one more time. And then that's why it's really unknown which assets they'll hit, but it'll be up to the engineers. I don't know if anybody's available to talk to what.
Yeah. I don't want to do this so rushed and on the fly like this. I think that this is a tremendously important piece of work for us all to understand and be able to pick these things apart and be able to allocate them. I think that staff did exactly what we asked them to do. Go away and look at the list of the asset management plan, come back with a recommendation. I think that you've done that. I think we still want to understand it and we want to ask some questions. I would recommend that we receive this for information right now and then move this forward to the next meeting so that we can discuss it in the context of the questions and then in light of the budget, so that we understand what each of these costs will cost us. Is everyone comfortable with that? Yeah, Mike.
Just trying to get clarity on what you just said. So are you talking about everything on that list or you're just
The
talking
whole
about
thing.
number one?
No, the whole allocation conversation. Because I think that there are more questions to be asked in light of gas tax funds and what other projects are being ignored by selecting these 6. And I don't want to ignore any of them, but we're going to have to pick and choose, obviously. And I would say that the electoral area directors will have some, I think Tony will have something to say. And I think that to your point, if this 325 should be split and allocated differently, let's do that. But I do not want to rush through this because it's TikTok, it's 4 o'clock. Go ahead.
Yeah, I support this approach. And just one more thing that I'm wondering or wanting to understand is how this aligns with settlement areas, the location of these. It is very explicit. This is about growing communities where we want to see growth. And so is it aligned with that?
To Mike's point, yeah, area C gets nothing, but it's the fastest growing area. Yeah, okay, so is everyone comfortable with that motion that we receive for information and defer to the next board meeting?
I'm comfortable. I did think that we were given the answer, which was there's lots of money in the gas tax funds. And we just move this forward and still do what we've been asked for. And it sounds to me like we're sending staff away, rejecting that and saying we want to see area C in this, but I think the money is available for area C in a different angle. If I was a staff member, I might come back saying same recommendation.
Yeah.
Like these are the needs and there's lots of money in the gas tax funds and we can do these things. So I'm not sure what different outcome we expect. Happy to support it though, and I'm just not sure what a staff would do in this conversation other than same recommendation.
Okay, I have Director Richmond, then Director Stoner, go ahead.
From my standpoint, they come, this list was created by staff, totally, logical, looking at all the needs. I get that there's community gas tax funds, but those are different, that's a different funding stream, and I'm not sure why, because there's money there that area C shouldn't access funds that were part of this growing community thing. So just because he's got money available over here, I'm not sure why that means to do projects. There's a number of projects, I'm sure, that could be done in area C that would fit this criteria for a growing community. Recreation is the one that jumps to my mind. So I'm happy to see this come back with some more thought put into it, and that would perhaps be an outcome. Staff come back and recommend the exact same list, and this table decides that that's the right list. I'm happy with that too. I just feel it's important that we have the opportunity to consider it, seeing as how area C is not represented in the agenda.
Yeah. I think what I heard staff say is that A and B don't have gas tax funds. And so let's understand what projects are needed in area C that can be from gas tax so that that's why I'm saying this is a bigger budget conversation.
Yeah.
Director Stoner, you dropped your hand, and then I'll go to Director Mack, and then we really got around it though. Go ahead.
Yeah, the thing with the gas tax funds, the way I've been led to believe is they're very, even now, they're very limited in their use. Whereas this set of funds here is pretty much wide open. So that's just something that we need to think about when going forward, because these funds can be used for pretty much everything. Gas tax funds, there's a list of what you can and can't do. So anyways, just a thought.
Thank you. So the motion on the floor. Moved, seconded, all in favor, any opposed, motion carries, thank you. Okay, request for funding from the Foundation Cultural Workshops. Someone move that. Moved by Director Richmond, seconded by Director Crompton. Yeah.
We're moving that?
Oh, aren't we?
No.
No, we're not.
I think there needs to be a
Receipt?
discussion.
That's a $10,000 ask for that cultural experience with the Squamish Nation. Is that what we're
We are
doing?
undecided on that? Yes, because this came from the area directors without a recommendation, right?
Correct. I don't think that there was no suggestion of contribution of funds at that
No.
table. That was
Okay.
referred to the board for
Got it.
consideration.
Sorry, I'm trying to jump.
Receipt?
Move receipt. And refer it to staff to come back with a recommendation.
Sounds good to me.
Yes?
Okay.
Right, yeah. That fair? Yeah. Moved by Director Crompton, seconded by Director Birch Jones. Comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. 1.2, District of Squamish. Letter of support. To read it. We support their request for a letter.
Motion to receive and write the letter.
Motion to receive and write the letter, seconded by Director Pettengill. Any, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Finally,
Letter of
11.3.
support for swims. Director Birch Jones.
Yes, I'd like to recommend that we write a letter of support.
Okay,
for this
seconded by
application.
Director Demare. Comments? All in favor? Any opposed?
But
Motion
who's open
carries.
today? Okay, sorry.
Another letter of support for Lillooet Legion.
I'd also like to
Director
recommend
Birch
that we
Jones.
write this letter of support.
Seconded by Director Compton. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Worthy cause.
Yes.
I'm gonna declare a conflict of interest on 11.5 and 11.6,
Okay.
as my daughter is employed by the BRCA and my wife is that.
Board.
Yeah. We have Jenna. We have Jenna on.
Oh, that's
screen
right.
And Russell on the screen, so we're still good.
Yeah, that makes 7, yeah. I'd like to move 11.5, the request for a letter of support from the Bridge River Valley Community Association.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Crompton. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. 11.6, Director Birch
I'd
Jones.
like to move that.
Seconded
Oh,
by?
okay, this is for the grant writer.
Yeah,
Okay, that the report's done. We'd like to get it in so that we're in good time.
okay. Seconded by?
One question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is this going to move things faster or is it already happening?
We need to provide support in order to get the next round of funding.
Okay.
So we just
this-
need to,
This resolution's helpful.
yes, it is.
Seconded by Director Crompton.
Thank you.
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. You want to bring Sal back?
Yes, and also this avoids a gap in the funding. That's why we're sort of pushing it along here is. And also these red up letters, as I'm sure you all know, need to go in pretty quick. So there's sample letters there for your convenience.
I was just asking whether staff's already doing work, so.
Yes. Thank you. Letter of support for the Downton Lake Fire Loss Working Group Advocacy and related follow-up correspondence. I think this was discussed earlier, but this formalizes receiving their request. I think the motion is to receive their request.
Well, I think I would like to, they've asked for 3 specific things. So I'd like to make a motion that we actually have a meeting with appropriate parties.
Yeah, it's already underway.
Yeah.
Planning's underway.
Planning's underway.
Yeah.
And a simple plan
Underway
The
as well.
one pager.
underway. And a formal plan that outlines, and that's in the motion that we made earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
with that, the motion is to receive. Because the work is already done. Moved by Director Demare, second by Director Crompton. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
May I make a comment? I
Please.
think it would be, what we can do is, obviously, we're gonna be connecting with them to set up the meeting. And then again, we will let them know once we have the website, the flow chart, the FAQ, all of those other communication pieces up and running. I know a lot of them are monitoring and seeing what's happening, but we can just send that information to them so that they know.
Yeah. I'd like to make a comment. if I
Yeah.
could. One of the issues that they've all talked about is changes to plans, and then we're going another change on the funding program for the hazard testing. That'll make about 3 different times. There's other ones that have been the same, but there's never been an explanation why. I think that aspect of communication really needs to be looked at so that they understand why some of these changes are being made. They get very frustrated because of that. I'm getting emails constantly, as a lot of the board members have, and
Yeah, I think I can understand they're frustrated that they want everything everyone wants to get in there and get seeing work done, and they're looking to see what's happening. This is new ground for us. And so with the asbestos hazardous waste testing, we were rolling it out. We've never done it before. Is it gonna work? Oh, no, that didn't work. Okay, let's pivot. Okay, this is how we're going to be able to address that. And I think we're being quite nimble and being able to respond quite quickly. I personally, I don't think it's to provide the energy to explain why we had a change in rationale. I don't know if that's the best use of our time, other than to make sure we're correcting the matter and communicating that this is the process now to follow. We would constantly, new territory. We're, like, as I mentioned before, we're really trying to respond to individuals, and maybe we're doing it too quickly. Maybe we need to go, you know what? No, we're going to take another 2 weeks on that, which I don't think people want to see either. But in order to really prove out a process, just like when a bylaw is passed, you don't, once you start implementing it, you go, oh, this section might not work. We need to bring this back for an amendment. I think we're just doing our best. I don't think that we're going to be able to explain every reason why we're changing a process.
I think now that, that there's that email list in that group, that, communications should start improving on the whole front.
That was a very good letter from MLA Taggart. It's pretty solid.
We've moved 11.8. No, 11.7. We're gonna do 11.8, which is a request for support. We refer this to staff. Move receipt and refer to staff. And seconded by Director Rich Jones. And I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
I've got a few comments.
Okay.
Please. We did get a response. John Christian and myself were communicating back and forth with Marty, and we did get an excellent response letter, and I shared it with Mickey, and very, very positive letter on a lot of the issues with the ditching. They're going to actually do have an Avitech check some of the areas for any possible avalanche areas now that a lot of the cover is gone. Interwest Timber, they also have a geotech on. They're going to have a hydrologist for any of the riparian areas, which means creeks, anywhere they're going to be working. And the results of the first water test have come back, and there are some concerns. E. coli and some other benzene and so on and so forth, but they haven't got the report yet. So, and like we mentioned, the PRV Preservation Conservation Fund is going to fund one set of tests next year, and I've committed to funding the second set of testing through PILT. So, there's lots there, but if you want to refer back to staff to reply, that's fine.
Okay. We've already moved it. Okay. And Director Demare, we look forward to hearing a more fulsome report at our next meeting when we're in your area.
Yeah.
We'll have more information to share at that time. Thank you. And our deepest sympathies do go to the community, because this was traumatic. We saw firsthand how shocking it is.
Yeah, like I mentioned in some conversations, now that the snow is on the mountainside and we're across from it, looking at it, you can really see the impact of where the fire was, because it's more white than the rest of the areas, and it's totally different from when you guys saw. You can definitely tell where the super hot spots were.
Thank you. 11.9 is that 5.2.2 letter that was pulled by Director Pettingill, and you've circulated a resolution to our emails. If you would mind, could you read it? If you'd like to make that resolution for this for
Yep.
this issue?
So the proposed, and just a little bit of context, we've passed resolutions here at this table with regards to lack of adequate engagement with Forest BC and others, in particular around effluent. And so the energy regulator asked Fortis to go back and do some public engagement. And in the interim, they also approved a 1.5-year temporary permit, which allows them to move forward regardless of the permitting process and sort of bypass the whole process, which they're still required to do. And so this is sort of saying like, no, we need to, they didn't do their adequate consultation, ask them to do the process. And so it's an advocacy letter. So whereas over several years, the SLRD, the province and the public have communicated that Forest BC public engagement on their project and permits has been inadequate with limited improvement from Forest BC on their engagement practices. And whereas Forest BC has freely chosen to enter into contracts, obligations with timelines that make it difficult for Forest BC to adequately deal with lacking engagement and necessary mitigations, thereby putting the consequences of its inadequate permit engagement on the public. And whereas the proponent's continued and willful failures to engage in required permit processes should not enable them to bypass fair process of engagement. Resolved that the SLRD chair communicates with the BC Energy Regulator, Minister Osborne, and Minister Heyman and other relevant parties regarding concerns that granting temporary permit to Fortis for effluent discharge undermines the purpose and value of permit process and puts critical ecosystems and reliant economic development interests at risk. And resolve that the SLRD chair requests that Forest BC's temporary effluent permits be revoked, paused, or otherwise suspended in favor of the standard permit process.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, moved by Director Pettengill, seconded by Director Demare. Comments?
I totally agree with the resolved of the last two paragraphs. I'm wondering if we want just to hit me as a little bit. Has been inadequate with limited improvement. Okay, good. Freely and they've chosen to enter into with timelines that make it difficult. Proponents continued and welfare fair. Okay.
I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Chris.
Well done.
Very good. We're going to receive the correspondence for information 12.1.
I'll make that motion, but I'd like to make a comment after.
Okay, seconded by Director Crompton. Comment.
So, MLA Jackie Tager. She's been through a lot. Elephant Hill wildfire, Atmospheric River in the Nicolet Valley, Lytton Fire, and now the fires in our area. So she's been through a lot, and she's actually got about a half-hour speech that she's done on all these impacts and why it's important, why the provincial government step up. She, out of everybody, she's been affected the most of all the various MLAs. So her little letter here is right on the money.
Thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. No late business. We dealt with.
Yeah. You just need a motion that original to be considered at this meeting.
Yes, and that was the changes to those minutes.
And then there was one additional
And
one.
the airport land potential lease.
And the Lillooet private council letter of support.
Right.
Yeah.
Each separately.
We need a resolution to consider them. No, second.
Okay.
Yeah. Where are we now?
14.1 moved by Director Crompton, seconded by Director Burgess Jones. And all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries with great. Gun Lake Airport. Letter of support moved by Director Demare, seconded by Director Richmond. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And Letter of support, Lillooet Tribal Council, moved by Director Birch Jones, second by Director Crompton. All in favor, any opposed, motion carries. Any notice of motion? Seeing none, I have someone move that we re-close the meeting. Moved by Director Crompton, second by Director Pettingill. All in favor, any opposed, motion carries. We're forward.